All right. Hey guys, thank you for joining us at Move More, Worry Less. I'm your host, Paige Festa, the owner and designer of 13th Fit Apparel. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, so I'm really excited to have my friend Michael on with me today to talk about sobriety, eating disorders, and positivity in fitness. So I would love it, Michael, if you could give a little intro on yourself, a little bit about where you are now, and then we'll backtrack and talk about where you've been and how you got to where you are.
Sounds good. What's up, Paige? I am Michael. It's so good to see you and talk to you again about this. I'm really pumped to talk about May, especially with it being Mental Health Awareness Month. So my name, like I said, is Michael. I work in New York City. I'm a fitness professional here. I've been teaching in the industry for about 5 years, 2 of those years in New York City. I'm now a full-time head trainer for F45 Flatiron. So I lead the Manhattan group, basically, as well as working in the Lower East Side and Dumbo location. So I spend most of my time working on F45. I teach on Zoom as well as for an app called Onyx, which will be launching in September for a group fitness thing, which is really exciting. And I live, like I said, full-time in New York City. I have a dog. I have a boyfriend named Jason, who is like my biggest inspiration and cheerleader. And that is how I basically got into New York City. That's my little umbrella term of who I am. And then we'll dive a little bit deeper in.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's so cool because when I first met you is when we were working at Flywheel. And the first time I ever met you, I was like, this dude is so positive. And then you were like that nice and that positive every time I saw you. And I just remember you being so excited to get into the fitness industry. So seeing you doing all the things that you're doing now, I feel like you're always moving and doing cool stuff. So I'm super proud of you, and I'm crazy excited to have you on because we haven't talked in 2 years, and that's crazy.
This is a great time to bring that 2 years to an end and bring it back.
Reconnect. So let's get into it. I'm going to kind of give the floor to you to kind of give your background, how long you've been sober, what made you decide to choose sobriety, maybe talk a little bit about your eating disorders. I don't want to overwhelm you with such broad questions. Yeah. I might sprinkle in some other stuff, but you have so many interesting things to talk about and to say. So I would love to give you the floor. And if I interrupt you, then I interrupt you.
Then interrupt me. Yeah. So let's break it down. I grew up in Connecticut. I was not a sports person. I did not work out. That was my brother's thing. He did karate, he did track, he went to states, he went to nationals, he did all of that. I was the theater boy. So I majored mostly my entire, I would say from second grade all the way into my senior year in college was all about theater, specifically singing. So I was trained classically, and then I did basically voice lessons for about 20 plus years. So it was a huge part of what I do. I don't do it anymore, and I'll kind of describe basically why I no longer train that. So I did everything in theater. I went to a special high school where I did a little bit of normal people high school, and then I would go to an arts normal performing high school, kind of fame. Yeah, it was I got all the normal classes done, and then I went and danced for the afternoon. So I did that for 4 years, and then I majored in acting in New York City for 1 year. And this is kind of where I want to say that drinking became a thing, because in high school, I mean, it was the cool thing to do. It sounds rude, but I was in the in crowd so far for my friends. So we would just hang out on Saturdays, drinking Mike's Hard Lemonade, thinking we were so badass. Ew. But that was kind of, I know, wild. But that was kind of where things started in sense of the party team. And then I was adamant that when I went to school, I would leave Connecticut because I was a rebellious 18-year-old. And I was I would never live in Connecticut. And so I was I'm going to go to New York City. And I went to New York City, and I was not ready for it. I wasn't really crazy about the program, so that's one of the main reasons I transferred back to a school in Connecticut. But I think being 18 and living on your own in New York City is a wild experience. I mean, I feel most people, even in their 20s, maybe even young 30s, New York City's hard. And then add in the idea that you're in college and you're 18 and you're deciding who you are as a person now. 10 times harder. So I ultimately decided that being in New York City for that first year was a great experience. It ultimately wasn't going to be for me. And I transferred to a school about 25 minutes from my parents' house in Connecticut that I knew pretty well. So I went for musical theater there for all 4 years. And there I was pretty much like the partying person. I was known for like making edibles and like any type of college party. Like I was there. I was like a master at making jungle juice. Like that was my thing. I loved being
You
a party person.
graduated
And I think
from
it's
Mike's Hard to Jungle Juice. That's
to
cool.
like jungle juice in a bin in someone's basement.
Right.
Like that progression. But what I loved about it was that like when people come to a party, they typically don't come because sometimes they come when they're sad, but for the most part, you're there for a good time. And I love how people feel when they're at parties, that it's just like, we're going to have a lot of fun. That's all it is. And I love that aspect of it. But what comes with that and what I gravitated towards was the alcohol in it. Because that to me, and the other recreational drugs that go with it, that to me was how you had fun. And that's what I associated with. Like, I cannot have fun unless I have these drinks, or unless I have weed, or unless I have something for you. And that way you'll connect with me and then we can have fun from there. It felt really much like transitional in the sense of like I was the bridge gapping these people together. And the bridge itself had to be a substance of some sort. So while at school, I had decided, I was like, I think maybe I have a small issue with drinking. And I told some teachers about it. And they knew about it, and they asked, you know, like the hard-hitting questions, like, have you seen a therapist about it? And our school like has like student therapists that you can go see for free. And I saw one, and I didn't really like the answers they gave me. They were like, maybe you need to see like a professional. And I was like, I'm going to prove you. So I didn't take their advice, and I continued just to live my life. I was like, you know what, maybe this is a phase. This is like a 3-week funk, and then things will get better. And it ultimately did and didn't at the same time. I think I was more aware of like, ooh, there could be a problem here, but I didn't address it. I didn't like go to AA. I didn't tell my parents or anything. I continued to drink all throughout college up until graduation day, where my friend and I woke up at 7 a.m. We took shots. We went to the graduation ceremony. And then after that, it's like that college life just ends instantly. As soon as you move out, like that's it, you're done with it. And I had gone to a theater to work for the summer, and there the work was so intense that you didn't really have time to drink. You didn't really have time to relax in that sense, because it was, you know, you were in rehearsals from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. If you're in a show, you're in rehearsals at 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. So it's just, there was really no time. So that I think was when I first started this idea of like sobriety, and like how, wow, I can get like a lot done in the day when you don't have your drinking. But it didn't make me say, I'm going to be sober forever. So we had a few days off. So here and there we would party. Some special nights, you know, you would have like a ton of wine. And like, again, what I loved was that everyone was having a good time. And it's kind of like something that what I'm getting towards is like what you said when you first met me. You were like, oh my God, you are so positive. And I, while drinking, associated it that when I'm drinking, I am so positive. People like love me when I'm drunk. And I continued to do that. And then the contract had ended, and most of the people in that contract went back to their respected schools. But I had graduated, so I didn't have a respected school to go to. I didn't have a program to do. I was like at this gray area where I was like, I'm an adult and I can do whatever I want with my life. What do I do? So I moved to the Sister Theater, which is in Vermont. And they had offered me a small, like really, really small internship. It was like $150 a week, free housing. And I was like, sure, I'll go there. I knew absolutely nothing, knew nothing about the town, knew truly no one in the company, knew nothing about the company. I said I was going to go do it. The thing with the company is that we all work together in the sense of like, you all know each other. We all live in sort of the same housing or the same housing units. But once work is done, like you don't really want to go hang out with those people because you just spent 8 hours with them. So I started working out at the local gym because we had a little partnership with them. So I would go take It was an outdoor boot camp, and it was like really, really butch. And I knew absolutely not, like, couldn't do a push up, couldn't really hold a plank. It's like out in the grass, you're flipping tires, you're using these TRX machines, you're, like moving piles of wood chips around and doing sprints like in the parking lot. And it was really, really like outdoorsy, and I loved it. And I loved how I felt. But I also lived alone. So what I could do is I could go work out after, talk to these people for a little bit, started to see like what a community was like. And then on the way home, if I wanted to, I could stop and like pick up a bottle of wine at the gas station or at the local like liquor store, and then I could go home. And then at that point, I was like, oh, I'm just gonna have like a glass of wine. And that's like never really the case. And then it started becoming, okay, like I'm now gonna have a whole bottle of wine to myself at night. And then this is where you have those empty calories from working out because you're now in a deficit. So then I was like, oh, if I have this one glass of wine, it really feels closer to 3, like how great that is for me. And then I would have 2 glasses of wine. So then I feel like I'm at like 6 glasses of wine. So I'm like pretty hammered at this point, and I typically don't eat. Or I would order like French fries and just eat like a ton of French fries and go to bed. And it started to become this cycle where it would be, I would work out, come home and drink, make something, go to bed. And I lived in this cycle for about 2 years consistently. And it went from wine, and then it would kind of go into like gin, and then it would go vodka. And vodka is like really where I would say I like maxed out at, because you could get the proof so high and have it so pure. So I started I would go and I would take a spin class. And then from there, I would pick up a little pint of 100 proof vodka. I can like remember the label, I remember the brand. I would go home and I would have that for dinner. And then I would wake up the next day and I'd be like, I don't understand how people like have hangovers and just like go to work. Like, I guess everybody's functioning this way. Because that's just what I thought. I thought everyone functioned this way. Turns out no one really does. Well, people do. But to me, that's what I thought was normal. I then was getting really tired of it. I started watching, have you ever seen the show Nurse Jackie?
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it. No.
So I watched Nurse Jackie, and it's incredible. Highly recommend it. Like, Edie Falco, absolutely incredible. So I was watching Nurse Jackie, and she's a nurse that uses prescription pills. And I was watching her, and I believe like the last episode ends with it's a line along the terms of like, God, I want to be good. I want to be so good, just not yet. And then that's the end of the first episode. And that's how I felt. I was like, I just want to be the best person I can, but not yet. And I kept falling into that cycle of like work out, drink all the time. And it was like I would show up to some of my classes hungover. And it was like I would show into work late, and I would have stupid excuses like, oh, my car wouldn't start. I lived walking distance from the theater, so there's no reason for me to be late. And I was just like, I don't think I can live like this any longer. And I reached out to my friend Jordan Siegel, and I was like, I knew of him as being sober. And I said, I think I have like a problem and I don't know what to do. And he said, call me. And I hadn't spoken to him in like 5 years. And I was like, I'm going to make this call and like say these words that I need help. And then you go into that battle of like, can you own that? Like, can you own the fact that you need help? Can you actually say that? Do you really need help? Or do you just need like a good night's sleep? Like, what do you actually need? And I called him and I was like, I'm so scared to say this, but like, I need help and I don't know what to do. And I don't know how to get through a night without it. And I don't know how to get through a day without it. And what do I do? And he's like, we'll just start talking every hour. So from there, he said, I need to know, do you want to stop? And I said, yes, I'm going to stop. And then he said, okay, I'm going to text you every single hour just to see how you're doing. And I said, okay. He texted me an hour later. It didn't respond. And then he called me and he was like, what's going on? And I was like, I'm not drinking. And he's like, you have to respond to me. You have to respond to me. It's the only way I can know. And I said, okay. So then we started going every hour and I would text him. And I also used Twitter as a way of keeping a tally. So I remember I started it and I was like, I said something like, I'm going to stop drinking for a little bit. This is day 1. It's really hard. And then it would go day 2, even harder. Day 3, worse. And I just kind of used that as like a way to stay like honest in a way that like at the time, Twitter wasn't so controversial. It was just like statuses that you could just write. So it just felt like I was saying in an online journal without really telling people like how bad it had gotten. But it was just letting them know like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it and hold you guys accountable by just saying these things. And then Jordan and I started going, more than a few hours, or it would be every other day. And on day 21, I had called my mom and I told her, hey, I need to stop. Like, I'm going to stop drinking. I have a problem with it. I need to stop. She had asked me, do you want to go to AA? And I was like, no, I don't want to go to AA. Mostly because I had an AA book and I was reading some of it. And it's a little, for people that it works for, it's great. Obviously it works. It's a little too religious-y for me. And I just like didn't vibe with that aspect of it. So that's why I ultimately didn't go with it. And my mom said, I understand why you want to give up or you want to be sober. My mom is sober. She was a heroin addict for most of my childhood. So is my dad. So I knew that addiction was going to be pretty strong. And I had seen the worst of the worst with them, but I also knew like how good it could be if you're sober. Like you don't, when you're in it and you're in your addiction throes, like you see these people living these lives. Like you see them so healthy, glowing, living the best life. They're living their job that they want to do. Everything comes so easy to them and you want that so badly. It's all I could think about. It's like, I want that. I want to be good at, like I said, I want to be good, but just not yet. I wanted to be so good at whatever job I had. And when you see people who aren't in the throes of an addiction and they're so good at what they do, you get so jealous and you get so upset. And then the addiction comes in to help you feel better in that time. It eases some of that pressure. So my mom was like, I understand exactly what you're doing. Like, you just need to let me know. If you want to go back to drinking, you can. If you want to relapse, it's fine. We all have. It's just part of the process. And like, you have to know if you relapse, it's not you starting again at day one. It's just us like pausing this and you'll come back to where you just were, which was really helpful to hear. Because even though my parents were using when I was younger, it was obvious to us, but we never like, as kids, like we never like really talked to our parents about like, what are you physically feeling right now in this given moment? Like you just don't have those conversations. So it was great to know. And then I also knew with that, I could confide in her in the moments that get really hard, but also in the moments that get really good. Like I can't tell you how amazing it was to like finally start waking up without a headache and being like, wow, like I don't need to this month buy a new bottle of Advil. I just thought everyone always woke up with a hangover. I just always thought you always had some bit of a headache. And like that was so like such a great joy. And it sounds so silly, but like it was so exciting to be like, oh my God, I'm up at 6 a.m. and my head doesn't hurt. That's so cool because it would become a normal thing. And then the other thing that I remember being like a landmark moment was like being able to fall asleep at night. You forget how to do that naturally. Like you just do, because like for me, it was like, I naturally am going to fall asleep because I'm just going to black out. And at some point my body will get me back to bed. But to be like, whoa, I'm going to go to bed. I'll put my phone away. I'm going to lay here. And I'm just going to fall asleep and know that I'm doing it naturally was so exciting. Like I remember getting ready for bed and being like, I'm going to go to bed naturally tonight. It's going to be so great. And I'm going to get actually restful sleep. And it just kind of like changed my whole outlook on how much of my life I was missing because I was delaying so much with the alcohol. Cause it just, it lets you pause things. It's like pausing, like if your life is a soundtrack, like alcohol to me was a pause button. I was like, oh, I don't want this moment to go yet. I'm just going to hit pause real quick. And then I would pick it back up whenever I felt ready to go again. So to no longer pause that and have to process things as they come naturally, challenging, but exciting. And then this is what led me to coming to New York. So while going through all,
I have a question that I just want to throw in the middle of this before you get to New York. If you don't mind. So before, in the beginning, drinking was your way to be like fun around people. And then when you moved to Vermont, right? You started drinking alone. So like, what was like the reason you started drinking and liked it was for the fact that people liked you when you were drinking. And then you were in
Mm.
Vermont by yourself. So I'm just curious about that transition, like how that translated from being the center of like a party situation to like being home alone.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point because so it does start off that way. Like for me, it started off like I definitely wanted to when I was drinking, I was having fun and I was with people. Um and in that sense, when you're having that type of fun, there's a feeling that comes along with it. There's definitely like a high that comes with it. And then when you start taking away those people, you start missing, in my world, I started missing that high or like that fun or that silly side. So I would drink because I was like, oh, I know, like, how do I get that? Like, sometimes when you go through those like creative ruts where you're like, I don't know how to be creative again. I don't know, like, where's my child side? Like, where is my like creativity side? That's how I felt. I was like, I feel like I'm working this 9 to 5. I'm not having fun in it. Where is like the child side? Like, what can I do to have fun again? Oh, when I drank, I have fun. So why don't I drink and I'll have some fun? So
Okay.
I'll do that. And that's where I'll find the fun again to chop up my mundane life again. And that is such a slippery slope because now the thing to make you fun, you're being fun alone, totally fine. Like you should have fun on your own. But now it was like teetering where it's like nobody's there to watch it and I can't share it with anyone. And then the fun starts to like lessen because now I'm alone and I'm drunk and I'm feeling silly. So, but what am I going to do with all this silliness? I'll just have like another drink and I'm sure plans will arrive and then no plans arrive. And then before you know it, you're just like completely annihilated
Right.
and you're asleep. So it's like that fun is so quick. Like I would say, like I would say, because we're like because we are cycling instructors, like catching like a 128 fun. That's what drinking is. It's like catching a 128, but then before you know it, you're in the 40s and you're like,
Right.
oh, I don't like this. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
I guess that's kind of how I felt towards it. You know, I
Right.
was on this chase of like, how do I find fun in Vermont? And I just remembered that alcohol was fun for me and
Right.
it's an
You
easy plug-in.
disassociated it.
Yeah, that's really kind of how it went.
Right. Okay. So I interrupted you as I
That's
told you I
okay.
would. So we can move into your New York part that you were gonna journey into.
Yeah, everyone who's listening, I'm cooking rice. Let me just turn off my burner real quick.
Meal prep life.
You have to get your carbs in. They're so important.
You're so important.
So New York life. While I was processing this whole being sober, I was teaching cycling at our local gym. And like teaching cycling at the local gym was like, no one was using Spotify. Like nobody used Beats and RPM and gear or anything like that. It was like, I look back at it and I was like, wow, that was like not real, but it was also real at the same time.
Yeah.
So I was like, I love cycling and I love fitness, but like, how can I teach this full time? And I limited myself saying that like, the only way I can do this is if I move to New York City. I knew that I was going to be asked to stay for another year at the theater. I didn't want to because I was in this like cycle of drinking and I wanted so desperately to get out of it. I didn't admit that I wanted to be sober yet. So they had asked me to do another year and I turned it down. And I turned it down and I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And in that moment, I was like, you just committed to New York. Like you have to go then. So I was going to leave this theater that had become my home for 2 years. And I was going to move to New York at the end of my contract. So I still had about 6 months left. And I didn't get sober or say I wanted to get sober until April 16th. And my last day at the company was April 24th. And my first movement date in New York City was May 1st. So like really short time of sobriety in order to move to New York City. But I knew that I really wanted to teach specifically for flywheel sports. And I wanted to do it so badly. And I said, this is a chance. Now that I have about 3 weeks of sobriety under me, this is a chance for me to move to a city, a new place with people I don't necessarily know, and I can be and live this sober lifestyle. So for me, I had put so much at stake that the idea of moving to New York City and drinking was just like not an option. It just couldn't be because I would risk everything else that I had already risked. So I felt like I was taking this huge step off of this massive cliff of like, it's the first time that I was saying, I'm also not going to do anything in theater. I don't, and that was like, 25 years of my life was all theater. All my friends do theater. Like I was going to move and like not know what to do. So I moved to New York City. I interviewed with Flywheel Sports the next day, and I got hired as the studio supervisor, which is where I met you.
Yeah.
And so fun, spraying the shoes, wiping the bikes, all that stuff.
Cleaning up all the sweat.
So fun. So I was like doing that and I was loving it. Because I'd come from like this theater background. So I had like a really strong admin side. And I was doing what I loved. And I loved that I could take class. And at the time, what I loved was that for the first time, I was really taking class sober. And I mean sober in the sense of like, I hadn't drank at that point in about a month. So I had a month of sobriety under my belt. I felt really great. But then the hard thing about New York is like, Paige, I'll ask you a question. When you go out on a date, like, what do you typically do?
Right.
In New York City?
Get a drink. Or a coffee. Or a coffee. But mostly a drink.
Most of the time it's a drink, right? Especially like if you're like, you get out of work at like 8 p.m. I'm like not gonna get a coffee then. Right. So I remember I went on a date with someone in June. So I was there for a month now. And he was so nice. He was like, like, it's okay. Like, I'm not going to drink with you. Totally fine. Cause I put that, like, I don't drink. I wanted everyone to know I don't drink. Cause that also put the stakes on there that if I did start drinking, it's a side of me that no one knew. And I shouldn't show that yet. I didn't want to give that up. I really wanted sobriety to be part of my name. And I went on a date with him. And it was the first time I had gone on a date sober. And I freaked out. Literally freaked out because I was like, oh, I don't know how to be intimate sober. I don't think I've ever have been. I don't know what it is to have like that awkward dating conversation sober. It's probably the most awkward thing to possibly, I think everyone's really awkward on a first date. And then to be like, I have nothing to escape this except like this Americano, which is just going to spike my anxiety again. Right. So like, this is like the worst thing. So I ended up telling him like, I'm not ready. And I like stopped dating fully. I was like, I just deleted all the apps. I was like, I'm just going to work. I want to be an instructor. And that's when I started training to be an instructor, like taking classes 6 days a week, really working as hard as I could. And I ended up meeting Jason at Flywheel Sports. And I liked him instantly. And he liked me instantly, but I refused to do anything because I wanted to be an instructor. I was like, that's my goal. And I cannot let anything get in the way. So I stayed sober. I stayed really, really focused on it. I auditioned. I didn't get it. And that I think was the first big blow in New York City that would cause previous Michael to drink. Because everything I had done the 6 months leading up to that, a little bit longer, 9 months leading up to that, was to be sober for that one moment to be hired to teach. And I didn't get it. And I was crushed, like devastated, was not the most positive person. I didn't really act the best after that. I was so heartbroken by it because then it made me say, then why the fuck am I sober? Like, and I remember calling my mom. I was like, why am I doing this then? And she's like, there's so much more. There's just like, she's like, I don't know how else to tell you this, but there's just so much more out there than just this one job. And then that is when I decided to go after Jason. And I was like, I guess I'm going to date you. So because at the time I was like, you know what? Who cares? Who cares if I start dating at this point? Because it doesn't matter. And then Jason was the first boy that I was with who I didn't feel the need to drink around at all. I felt like on our first date, like we went to, it was Christmas Eve. And I was like, we're going to go look at the window displays. Nobody's going to be there. No, like it's Christmas Eve. Everyone's going to be inside. So we don't like a ton of people. And we're in this crowd of like 10,000 people looking at the freaking tree. And I was like, why are we here? And I was like, this is such an awkward first date where we don't like a bunch of people. We're in the middle of a crowd. There's like 16 Olafs around us. What are we going to do? So we like book it to the Upper West Side and we went out to eat. And I had told him, I was like, you can get what you want. If you want to drink, you can. And he was like, no, I don't want to drink. And in that moment, I was like, oh, okay. Okay. And for our first, I want to say like 8-10 dates, he didn't drink in front of me, which I thought was so respectful. And um and I felt as if he was one of the first people I have met where I could be 110% who I was and know that like there really were no expectations. I didn't have to drink for him. I was like naturally fun for him. And I felt so present with him. And he was the first guy I ever felt that with. And then with that, there comes like the challenges again. It's like, you know, while I was like a teenager, like any like intimate experience I ever had, I was like wasted for. And like to relearn that again, like I told him, I was like, it's like simple things, Paige, that you don't even think about, like French kissing, sober. Ugh, weird. It is so weird. So I was like, I told him, I was like, I'm like, this sounds like really odd, but I have to relearn all of this. Like holding hands, weird to me. Like it just, all of it changed. All of it did. And that was something where I was like, I need like a moment because I don't understand any of this. And I don't understand if I like it. Because for the first time, I was like present in a moment. I think we all have had that moment where you're like, you know, at a party and you're drinking and you're making out with someone and you feel like you're like really hot. And then you're making out with someone when you're sober and you're like, what are we doing? Like, why are our like lips doing this? And like, why do humans do that? Like you start having these thoughts because your mind is so clear that you're just like, why do humans do this? Who was the first person who ever kissed? Who invented kissing? Why do we call it kissing? Like you have those thoughts and my mind works that fast all the time. I know I'm getting off topic with him, but he also is one of the people who told me about the importance of sober in teaching because he never taught hungover. He always knew if he had to get up early, like he never would drink. And like, he's not a huge drinker. So he was able to teach me like so much when it comes to like being so clear-headed while you teach, which I think I didn't put that into perspective yet. I was so clear about my goal of what I wanted to do. I wanted to teach for this method. And he was so helpful in keeping a clear mind, but also how do I utilize that clear mind when it comes to teaching fitness?
Right.
So he, huge reason why I'm still sober today.
Right. And it's 3 years now, right?
Yeah, I just hit 3 years.
Yeah.
So it was a wild 3 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great. It's really like wonderful. And it feels as if like there's like no other way for me to live. Like I don't know. And this isn't to say that like I'm never going to relapse. Like who can say? Like I take it day by day. Or as John Wellman once told me, you know, it's the minutes go by slow, but the days and years go by fast. And that's really how sobriety works. It's like some minutes take forever, but then before you know it, you're like 3 years in and you're like, oh yeah, that happened. I don't know anything that happened previously, but like those 3 years, they went by really fast.
Right. What's crazy to me is that, so when I met you, you'd been like a month sober. And to me, we just met. I didn't know that. I don't think I knew anything about your journey until your 1 year mark. Cause I remember you posting it on social media and I was like, holy shit. Like, it's just crazy because you don't know what people, and that's just like a thing. Like you never know what people are dealing with, like behind the scenes, not to mention, like I said, you are hands down on the top 3 most positive people. And I have them like in a list in my head. Like you were in the top 3 most positive people I've ever met. Every time I walked into the studio, you were friendly, even though you weren't teaching it and you wanted to be like, it was like, Paige, how can I help you set up for class? What could I do for you? Like you just wanted everybody to have a good experience. And I just think that's so amazing that you're able to be so positive while you're battling something on your own that people don't even know about. One of the questions I asked you in our like pre-interview was about positivity and just like, how do you maintain such a positive outlook? And even now, knowing that you're going through this journey and it can't be easy all the time. Like, how do you stay so positive when shit's hard?
I think I said like in my first answer to you, LOL, you are so sweet.
Yeah.
Really, you are. That is so nice. I think it is so much easier to live your life positively than any other way. And that's also really easy to say. And in the moments where like things get really real, like, I don't know, like a pandemic, like things got really real in that year. And like so much of what I worked for had stopped, just like everybody else. But I had to stay positive for everything I'd already built for myself and my own career. But it is so much easier to help people and to ask them what do they need. And I think one of the biggest things that I learned was that when I got sober, I finally could see people, like really see you and really say, like you said, like every time you come into the studio, I ask like, what do you need? Do you need help setting up? It's because like I can really see people, and not saying that if you drink, like I'm sure you see people, but for me, I couldn't. I felt like I was in this fog. I really couldn't connect with people. Like it always just felt blurry. And then when I got sober, I could just see people and see them honestly. And like I knew that what I was presenting was me 100% authentic. There was no like fake script. There's nothing like that. It was just me. And I noticed that one of not something I noticed, but I read a book while I had just started my sobriety called Hustle, Believe, Receive. And it's about working really hard, believing in your goal, and then you receive the outcome of that. And that is something I truly live by, is hustle, believe, and receive. Every single thing I do, every interaction I do, every job I do, I will hustle through it. I will believe that this is exactly what I need to do to get to my end goal, whatever my end goal might be. So I use that terminology and I use that kind of mantra to help me stay positive, because I know that like you said, how do you know what people are going through behind closed doors? Like you just don't know. And like, I mean, I'm a New Yorker. I get frustrated all the time with people that are like slow going up the subway stairs. And you have to take a moment and just say like, why am I mad right now? We are all going in the same direction. Like, I know you want to go, but like sometimes you have to be a local train, and sometimes you have to be a train that just gets stuck underground for a little bit, and you're okay, but you'll get to where you need to be. And I get like so passionate about being positive because there's so many people in this world, and it is so easy to be mean. I think it's really, really easy to be mean. It's easy to be rude, because I mean, I think we all get like a little high off of that, like, you know, this like high and mighty, like it's really easy to be dismissive. I think it's harder to be positive, but it is so much more beneficial to everyone around you, because I know what it's like to receive no's, and I know what it's like to go through really, really difficult moments. And sometimes like what you need is just someone to see you and just be like, what can I do? With like a little smile. It just helps. Like, I mean, I think it also helps like working a customer service job. Like if you haven't done it, like what are you waiting for? Go do it. I don't care if you're a CEO, like go serve coffee at Dunkin' and like see what happens. Know that what those people are going through, like just for you to have that like sip of joy, probably someone had a terrible day in order to make that. So I'm going to receive something joyful. I can pass that back to you. And I feel like, you know, some people are like, next, like I don't need someone who's so happy. But that's just how I feel. Like I have to be positive. And if I move with kindness, mostly everything that I quote unquote need will fall into place without any bumps in the road, without anything not fitting. I feel like the kinder I am, the nicer I am to people, the easier the things that I need to move forward to accelerate in my life, wherever my life might go, the smoother that road will be. I never want someone to say anything along the lines of like, he's untrustworthy, or I don't want someone to have a bad taste of who I am in their mouth. Because I'm also the creator of that. And I don't like knowing that I did that to someone. I think that that's just, it's just really mean. It makes me sad to think that way, but that's just kind of how I feel about it. And it's so powerful. Like I think we all have this power in us to be positive, and then when you don't do that, it's like, why are you ignoring your power? Why? Why don't you want to use it? Like, you have it. Like, just like freaking use it. Like, be nice. I just don't get it.
Yeah. No, and
And I
I
wish I
think
had more to say on it, but I get so passionate about it. I just don't know why people don't do it.
I am with you, and I wish I could be as positive as you. I try to be for sure, but I'm not on your
Yeah.
level, but you're like hashtag goals. But no, I think it's just an awesome mindset to have, especially like, I don't know. And I agree with you on the customer service thing. I think people should work in customer service because you you learn so much about people, and like just understanding the receiving side 100%. And I think it changes your mindset completely when you interact with people outside of that. Like I grew up, not, I didn't grow up working at IHOP. I worked at IHOP as like my first job, and I was a hostess and stuff. Obviously I work with a lot of customers now selling things, and I worked in retail, and it definitely changes the way that I see people. And like, I don't know if like I might get frustrated with somebody who like cuts me off on the road or whatever, but I'm like, oh, maybe they didn't see me. Like, and trying to like flip it because maybe they're having a terrible day. Like they didn't see that I was where I was and they cut me off. And I'm getting mad at them and yelling at them, but that's, who knows what's going on in their life. Maybe they're rushing home because there's an emergency. You just never know what people are
Right.
going through. I feel like I went a little bit off topic, but like it's in the same realm.
No, that's okay.
So I'm going to wrap this up with my final question for you, unless there's anything else pressing you feel you want to say. Um, no? Okay. So
No, I think I'm good.
in my last podcast that I had a guest, it was with my friend Kim, and I explained a little bit of this in more detail. So I won't go into it in detail as much now. But my last question is going to be, if you could give yourself advice, whether that's now, the past, or the future, what would it be? And the reason that I'm asking you this question and I asked him this question is that's where the phrase "move more, worry less" came from. That's advice that I gave myself when I worked with. So I did I'm going to do it like real nutshell here. I did a pop-up shop benefiting the Movement Foundation, a foundation that helps women or young women in body positivity and fitness. The campaign they had going on at the time was, what advice would you give your younger self if you could? And the advice that I gave myself in that campaign was move more and worry less. And then it just kind of translated so perfectly into the brand, and then became the name of the podcast because it has to do with fitness and mindset and all these different things. So I'm not directly stealing it from them because but it was such an inspiration to me. And using the phrase "move more, worry less" on our shirts and whatever, people really connect with it. And I love that. So I'm kind of like transferring the question from the Movement Foundation through 13th Fit Apparel and like filtering it. And just, it doesn't have to be your past self. It could be your future self. It could be right now, because it's so easy to give other people advice. Easier said than done, right? So like, what advice would you give yourself if you could? Or you can give yourself
Ooh.
advice.
No, that's a great question. And I also feel like it's like I have to think about what um what version of myself do I want to give this piece of advice to? Because I feel like I look at like how like we have all like grown up to be adults, and I feel like who I was when I was 8 obviously isn't who I am who I am as 28. So it's like I think it's like a version or a chapter of myself. And I would say that the overarching thing that I would tell myself is um I use this a lot when I teach. Um is this really simple saying of just you're okay. And I think that that is so powerful. And I heard it from Bethany Welch during a flywheel class saying, "You're okay." And it came during like a really difficult moment in her class. And I remember it sticking to me so hard. And it's advice that I think back on. And I feel like I look back and like I'm so proud of where I am now, and I wouldn't change anything. But what would happen if someone had told me, "You're okay," during difficult moments, during like the throes of an eating disorder, during the throes of alcoholism, "You're okay," and having that reassurance that like whatever I'm going through is okay to go through and fine to go through. It doesn't make you any different than the next person or any less than or more than would be all the better. And I tell my clients that too, like during like heavy moments or during like days where you don't want to work out or like life can just become a lot. You're okay is the saying I always go to because 99% of the time you're okay.
Right.
Like you really are just okay.
Yeah.
It's so simple, but like when I think about it, it like I just wish I had heard it earlier. And I think
Right.
like what could I be now if I heard that so long ago? So I would
Right.
just say, I know it sounds so
But you
simple and
wouldn't
so kind
necessarily
of
be who you
cliche,
are now. Like if you
right?
heard that
It's
earlier, like
true.
you went through so much to become who you are. So if somebody told you were okay before all of that, who knows where you'd be now? Because maybe you wouldn't have had to push through and like learn all these new things and grow into the person that you are, you know? So
No, and I'm like, and that's true. And that's why I wouldn't change anything. I
right.
wouldn't change like a single thing. I would maybe even like, dare I say, go back and relive it all. Maybe not middle school, but like definitely 100% like I like wouldn't look back and say, oh, I wish I turned a different way. But I just think that saying to me feels um just so comforting to say
Yeah.
to everyone. And I think it really clips in and it's just so simple. It takes like zero like 0.003 seconds to say. And it, I don't know, I think that's just like my go-to mantra lately.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so here's where I'm going to do my little sign off. So thank you so much for coming on today, Michael. It is so good to hear your story. It's so good to see your face and talk to you. So for those of you listening to the podcast, there's also a video on YouTube, so you'll be able to see us if you want to. So it's just awesome to reconnect with you. I see you on social media, but it's not the same as like having a conversation.
Not the same.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much for listening. If you haven't already, hit subscribe. You totally should. That's the only way that we can grow this podcast and our mission. If you don't follow us on Instagram, we're at 13 Fit Apparel, the word 13 spelled out. And I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.